I can't get pregnant. You will never forget this night, darling. She was given to a mafia boss as punishment. They thought humiliating her would make her disappear. They thought her slender frame made her fragile. They thought the mafia boss would finish what they started. They were wrong. Her wrists were tied loosely, almost like a joke, as if the men who brought her knew she wouldn't try to run. She had learned years ago that fighting back only made things worse. Her body had always been the excuse. Too thin, too breakable, too easy to ignore, too simple to blame. Tonight, it had made her throw away. The huge doors of the estate opened wide. Rich red curtains hung everywhere. Dark wooden furniture filled the room. The air smelled like expensive cigars and old money. They pushed her forward until she stood just a few steps away from him. "She's yours now," one of her family's men said, his voice fake and polite. "Think of it as payment for the trouble. Payment. Like she was a coin. Like she was trash." The mafia boss didn't move at all. He sat in a leather chair under a crystal light fixture that threw shadows across his face. One hand rested on the armrest. The other hung loose at his side. His hair was gray and black mixed together, combed back perfectly. His dark suit looked expensive and dangerous at the same time. He didn't look angry. He didn't look interested. He looked bored. That scared her more than yelling ever could. "She's worthless," another voice said quickly, trying to fill the quiet. "Couldn't take care of herself, couldn't help with anything, just caused trouble everywhere she went." The men were talking fast now, like they needed to explain themselves. That's when she understood something was very wrong. People didn't explain themselves to him. Ever. The room went completely silent. The boss finally looked up, not at the men who brought her, at her. For a second, she forgot how to breathe. She had pictured this man 100 different ways in her head. A monster. A killer. Someone who would prove that everything people said about her was true. But his dark eyes showed something she didn't expect. Not hunger. Something colder. Like he was thinking. Not about her body. About the cruelty filling the room. "Leave," he said, his voice quiet and calm. The men paused. "But I said leave." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The black tattoos on his right hand moved slightly as his fingers curled. The men left fast. Within seconds, they were gone. The door closed. She heard it lock. Now she was alone with him. Her heart beat, so hard she thought it might explode out of her chest. This was it. The moment everyone had warned her about. Pain. Shame. Death. He stood up slowly. He was tall, much taller than her. She stepped back without thinking until her back hit the cold wall behind her. "What did they tell you that you did wrong?" he asked. "Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Now let's jump right back in." She swallowed hard. "They said I failed." Failed at what? She pushed the words out past the heavy shame sitting in her throat. Being worth keeping. Silence filled the space between them. Then, without warning, he laughed. But it wasn't a mean laugh. It was tired. Sad almost. "They used you," he said, taking a step closer but not too close, "because you were the easiest person to blame." She stared at him, confused. "You're not scared," he said, watching her carefully. "I am," she answered, telling the truth. "I just don't have any space left inside me to show it." Something changed in his face. The hard lines softened just a little. "Look at me," he said. She did. "You were not given to me as punishment," he said slowly, like he wanted her to understand every word. "You were given to me because they thought I would make you disappear." Her chest felt tight. She couldn't say anything. "They were wrong." She blinked. "What do you mean?" He walked past her and opened the door she had her back against. "Go," he said simply. Her breath stopped. She didn't move. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I don't hurt people just to make weak men feel strong." Her legs almost gave out under her. "But everyone says you—" "Everyone lies," he interrupted. "Especially when they want to do terrible things without feeling guilty about it." She stood there, frozen. Years and years of shame screamed inside her head that this kindness was fake, that safety never stayed, that she didn't deserve anything good. He saw it on her face. "Stay then," he said more gently. "If that's what you want." No one will hurt you in this house. She looked at his face, searching for lies. She found nothing but truth. What do you want from me? The words barely came out of her mouth. His answer shocked her more than anything else that had happened tonight. Nothing. The room they took her to later was nothing like anywhere she had ever lived before. It was warm, clean. The bed had smooth silk sheets that no one had touched yet. Food sat waiting on a wooden table near the window. When she checked the door, there was no lock on the inside. She could leave whenever she wanted. She sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. Hands that people had called too bony, too weak, too useless for anything important. This felt worse than punishment somehow. This felt like confusion wrapped in kindness she didn't understand. Her whole life, she had learned how to survive by being small, by lasting through cruelty, by accepting that no one wanted her. Now she was sitting in the house of the most dangerous man in the entire city, and he was treating her like she mattered. Down the hallway, far from her room, the mafia boss stood alone in his private office. He stared at his own reflection in the dark window glass. He already knew what the truth was. The family that sent her to him had made a serious mistake. Not because they disrespected him. Disrespect meant nothing to a man like him. They made a mistake because they thought his mercy made him weak. They believed they had punished her by sending her here. What they actually did was hold up a mirror to his face. And what he saw in that reflection bothered him more than blood ever had. Because the girl they threw away like garbage wasn't weak at all. She was hurt, wounded, and people who hurt innocent others always learn too late what that mistake cost them. Outside the estate, the criminal world slept peacefully, not knowing what was coming. That peace wouldn't last much longer. The punishment that was meant for her had just changed direction. And what the mafia boss planned to do next would shock everyone who thought that being cruel meant you had power. By the time morning came, everyone in the household was already whispering about what would happen next. She woke up to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then everything rushed back. The room, the boss, the impossible kindness that still felt like a trick waiting to snap shut. Someone knocked softly on her door. She sat up fast, her heart pounding. "Come in," she said, her voice scratchy from not speaking. An older woman in a plain gray dress walked in carrying a tray. She looked about 50 years old, with tired eyes and hands that showed years of hard work. She didn't smile, but she didn't look cruel either. She just looked nervous. "Breakfast," the woman said quietly, placing the tray on the small table near the window. "Eggs, bread, fresh fruit, real food, not leftovers or scraps." "Thank you," she whispered. The woman nodded and turned to leave, but stopped at the doorway. "He wants you downstairs," she said without looking back. "In the dining room. When you're ready." Then she left. She stared at the food on the tray. Her stomach ached from hunger, but fear made it almost impossible to eat. What did he want now? Had he changed his mind overnight? Was this where the kindness stopped and the real punishment began? She forced herself to eat a few bites. Then she washed her face with cold water from a bowl sitting on the dresser and tried to smooth down her hair with shaking fingers. She looked at herself in the small mirror hanging on the wall. Dark shadows under her eyes. Lips still dry and split. She looked exactly like what she was. Someone people had thrown away. When she finally made herself go downstairs, her legs felt like they might give out. The house looked completely different in daylight. Tall windows everywhere. Ceilings so high they made her dizzy. Paintings hung on the walls that probably cost more money than she had ever seen in her life. Everything was spotless and quiet, but she could feel people watching her from doorways and side hallways. The staff, all of them curious, all of them wondering. The dining room sat at the end of a long hallway. The double doors stood open. She could see a huge wooden table inside with chairs lined up on both sides. Only one person sat at that table. The boss. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket like last night. Just a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. His tattoos showed clearly now, black and covering his forearms. He looked less formal. Somehow that made him seem more dangerous. "Sit," he said. Not rough, not gentle, just a statement. She walked slowly to the table and pulled out a chair far down from where he sat. Her hands trembled as she gripped the back of it. "Closer," he said, pointing to the chair directly across from him. She swallowed hard and moved to that chair instead. She sat down carefully, keeping her eyes on the empty plate in front of her. Within seconds, staff members appeared from a side door. They brought more food. Hot tea, fresh bread with butter, meat and cheese. They moved quietly, placing everything on the table between them, then disappeared just as fast. The boss picked up his cup and took a slow drink. She didn't touch anything. She just sat there, waiting for whatever came next. "You didn't sleep," he said finally. It wasn't a question. She didn't know how to answer anyway. "I can see it on your face," he continued. "You spent the whole night waiting for me to come through that door." She looked down at her hands folded in her lap. "I won't," he said simply. She glanced up at him, confused. He set his cup down. "The men who work for me need to understand something," he said, his voice carrying through the quiet room. She realized then that people were listening. Staff members hovering just out of sight in the hallways. Guards standing near doorways. Everyone was paying attention. "This woman is under my protection now. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. Anyone who harms her will answer to me personally. Is that clear?" She heard movement in the hallways. Shuffling feet. Quiet murmurs of "yes, sir," echoing from different directions. Her chest felt tight. She couldn't breathe properly. The boss looked directly at her now. "You're safe here," he said. "I don't say things I don't mean." Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had cried enough in her life. She was tired of crying. "Eat," he told her, pushing a plate of bread closer to her side of the table. "You're too thin. That's going to change." She picked up a piece of bread with shaking hands. It was still warm. Soft. It tasted better than anything she remembered. The energy in the house shifted in that moment. She felt it like a physical change in the air. The whispers in the hallways got quieter. The watching eyes turned away. Whatever test this had been, something had just been decided. She was no longer a prisoner. She was protected, and that terrified her almost as much as everything else. 3 days passed. 3 strange, quiet days where she mostly stayed in her room, only coming out for meals. The boss was always there at the table, morning and evening. He never forced her to talk. Sometimes he read papers while he ate. Sometimes he just sat in silence. But he was always there, like he was proving a point to everyone in the house. On the 4th morning, she woke up early. The sun was barely up. She couldn't stay in that room anymore. The walls felt too close. She needed air, space, something other than the same 4 corners. She dressed quickly and slipped out into the hallway. The house was still mostly asleep. Only a few staff members moved quietly through the lower floors, preparing for the day. No one stopped her. No one even looked at her funny. She realized that his protection meant freedom, at least inside these walls. She found a door at the back of the house that led outside. The garden stretched out before her, bigger than she expected. Green grass, stone paths, flowers she didn't know the names of. And at the far end, past a row of tall hedges, she saw a stable. She walked toward it without really thinking. She had always liked animals more than people. Animals didn't lie. They didn't pretend. The stable was clean and well kept. 3 horses stood in separate stalls, eating hay from nets hanging on the walls. The closest one was dark brown with a white stripe down its face. It lifted its head when she approached and looked at her with big, gentle eyes. "You can touch him if you want." She jumped, spinning around. The boss stood a few feet behind her. She hadn't heard him coming. He wore simple clothes today. Dark pants, a plain shirt, no jacket. He looked different somehow. Less like a dangerous man and more like just a person. "I didn't mean to," she started, not sure what she was apologizing for. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said calmly. He walked past her and reached out to stroke the horse's neck. The animal leaned into his touch, calm and trusting. "This is Dante. He's old now, retired, but he still likes company." She watched the way his tattooed hand moved gently across the horse's coat. Those same hands that people feared across the entire city. Right now they looked almost kind. "You don't look like a monster," she said before she could stop herself. The words hung in the air between them. She wanted to take them back immediately. Her heart started racing. What had she just said? To him. But he didn't get angry. He just kept petting the horse and stared out at nothing for a moment. "Monsters don't look like anything specific," he said finally. His voice was quiet but clear. "People think monsters have to look scary. Sharp teeth, claws, blood on their hands." He turned to face her now. "But real monsters look like everyone else. They smile. They shake hands. They sit at nice tables and make polite conversation. The difference isn't how they look. It's what they do when no one important is watching." She felt something shift inside her chest. Like a piece of truth she had been avoiding her whole life suddenly made sense. "My father looked like a good man," he continued, looking back at the horse. "He wore nice suits, went to church every Sunday. Everyone respected him." He paused. "He was also the cruelest person I ever knew. He taught me that appearances mean nothing. Actions are everything." "Is that why you didn't hurt me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because of what he was?" "No," he said. "I didn't hurt you, because hurting you would have made me exactly like the people who sent you here. And I decided a long time ago that I would never become that." She took a step closer to the horse. Her hand reached out slowly, carefully, until her fingers touched the warm neck. The horse didn't pull away. She felt its breathing, steady and calm. "They told me stories about you," she said. "Everyone did. They said you were the worst kind of person, that you had no mercy." "I don't," he replied honestly. "Not for people who deserve what's coming to them." "Then why am I different?" He looked at her with those dark, calculating eyes. "Because you didn't do anything. You were just convenient. And I don't punish people for being convenient to cowards." They stood there in the stable, the morning sun getting brighter through the open doors. Birds started singing somewhere in the garden. The horse chewed hay peacefully between them. "What happens now?" she asked. "That depends on you," he said. "You can stay here as long as you need to. No one will touch you. No one will force you to do anything. When you're ready to figure out what comes next, we'll talk about it. And if I'm never ready, then you stay." It sounded too simple, too easy. Nothing in her life had ever been easy. "I don't understand you," she admitted. For the first time since she met him, he almost smiled. "Almost." "Good," he said. "That means you're thinking. People who stop thinking stop surviving." He walked away then, back toward the house, leaving her alone with the horse and her thoughts. She stayed there for a long time, just standing in the quiet stable, feeling the sun warm her skin, wondering how someone so feared could be the first person in her entire life to treat her like she mattered. By the end of the week, she started feeling restless. Sitting in her room all day felt wrong. She wasn't used to doing nothing. Her whole life, she had worked, cleaned, served, made herself useful so people wouldn't have another reason to hate her. One afternoon, she saw the older woman from before carrying a heavy tray up the stairs. The same woman who had brought her breakfast that first morning. She was struggling with it, her arms shaking slightly. "Can I help?" she asked before she could stop herself. The woman looked at her with surprise. "You don't have to do that." "I know," she said, "but I want to." The woman studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "Top of the stairs. The sitting room on the right. Just tea and cups." She took the tray carefully. It was heavier than it looked. Silver teapot. For china cups. A small plate of biscuits. She climbed the stairs slowly, watching her feet, making sure she didn't trip. She made it to the top just fine. Started walking down the hallway toward the sitting room. She could hear voices inside. The boss and two other men talking about something in low tones. That's when her shoe caught on the edge of the carpet. She stumbled. The tray tilted. She tried to catch it, overcorrected, and everything went crashing to the floor. The sound was massive. The teapot shattered. The cups broke into pieces. Hot tea spread across the wooden floor and soaked into the carpet. Biscuits scattered everywhere. The talking inside the room stopped immediately. Her whole body went cold. She dropped to her knees without thinking, her hands already reaching for the broken pieces. This was it. This was where everything changed. Where the kindness ended. She had been stupid to think it could last. Stupid to try to help. Stupid to believe she deserved anything good. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. I'll clean it. I'll fix it. Please, I'm sorry." Her hands were shaking, so badly she could barely pick up the pieces. She didn't even notice when she cut her finger on a sharp edge of broken china. Blood mixed with the spilled tea on the floor. The door to the sitting room opened. She kept her head down, waiting for the yelling to start. For the punishment. For proof that she had been right all along. Footsteps approached. Stopped right in front of her. "Stop," the boss said. She froze, a piece of the broken teapot still in her bleeding hand. "Look at me." She couldn't. She physically could not lift her head. "Look at me," he repeated, gentler this time. She forced herself to look up. He stood there in his dark pants and white shirt, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't read. "It was an accident," he said simply. She blinked. Tears were running down her face, and she hadn't even realized it. "I broke it. I ruined everything. You tripped on a carpet," he said, cutting her off. "That's not a crime." He turned his head toward the hallway. "Someone bring a cloth and a broom," he called out calmly. "And bandages." She cut herself. 2 staff members appeared within seconds. They didn't look angry. They just looked concerned. One of them gently took her hand and wrapped a clean cloth around her bleeding finger. The other started sweeping up the broken pieces. "But I have to clean it," she said, still kneeling on the floor. "It's my fault." "No," the boss said firmly. He reached down and took her arm, pulling her up to her feet. Not roughly. "Just steady. You're not staff. You're a guest. Guests don't clean up accidents." "But—" She didn't understand. Nothing made sense. "I should be punished." Something dark crossed his face. "Who taught you that?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both knew. He let go of her arm but didn't step back. "Listen to me carefully," he said, his voice quiet but intense. "Accidents happen. People trip. Things break. That's normal. That's life. It doesn't mean you deserve to be hurt." The staff finished cleaning quickly and disappeared back down the hallway. The 2 men from the sitting room had come to the doorway to see what happened, but the boss waved them away. They left without argument. Now it was just the 2 of them standing in the hallway. Her finger throbbed under the bandage. Her face was still wet with tears. She felt like an idiot. "Sit down before you fall down," he said, gesturing to a bench against the wall. She sat. Her legs felt weak anyway. He sat next to her, not too close, but close enough that she could feel his presence. Solid. Real. Safe. "You're going to make mistakes while you're here," he said, staring straight ahead at the wall across from them. "You're going to break things. Spill things. Say the wrong thing at the wrong time. That's what people do. That's what being human is." She wiped her face with her free hand, trying to stop crying and failing. "And when those things happen," he continued, "nothing bad will follow. No punishment. No cruelty. No pain. Do you understand?" She nodded, even though part of her still didn't believe it. "Say it," he told her. "Nothing bad will happen," she whispered. Again. "Nothing bad will happen." Louder this time. He finally turned to look at her. "You're learning what relief feels like. It's going to be uncomfortable for a while. Your body is used to fear. Relief is foreign. But you'll get used to it. Relief. That's what this feeling was. The strange lightness in her chest. The way her shoulders slowly started to relax. The realization that the world hadn't ended over broken china and spilled tea. "Thank you," she said quietly. He stood up. "Come on. Let's get some proper bandages on that finger." She followed him down the stairs, her heart still racing but different now. Not from fear. From something else. Something she didn't have a name for yet. 2 weeks passed. She started exploring more of the house, eating meals without her stomach twisting into knots, even talking to some of the staff members when they passed her in the hallways. The older woman who had given her that first breakfast was named Rosa. She had worked in the house for 20 years and didn't ask nosy questions. She just treated her like a normal person. One morning, the boss found her in the library. She had discovered it by accident 3 days earlier and kept going back. Books covered every wall from floor to ceiling. More books than she had ever seen in one place. "Can you read?" he asked from the doorway. She looked up from the book in her lap. "Yes. My mother taught me before she died." He nodded. "Good. Read whatever you want." Then he paused. "I need you to come with me this afternoon. A tailor is coming to the house. You need proper clothes." She looked down at the plain dress she wore. One of 3 dresses Rosa had found for her from somewhere in the house. They all fit badly. Too loose in some places, too tight in others. "I don't need anything fancy," she said quickly. "You need clothes that fit," he replied. "Be in the main sitting room at 2 o'clock." He left before she could argue. At 2 o'clock exactly, she walked into the sitting room. The boss was already there, standing near the window. A thin man with gray hair and wire glasses stood in the center of the room, surrounded by bags and boxes. He wore an expensive-looking vest and kept checking a gold pocket watch. "Ah, finally!" the tailor said when he saw her. His voice was high and impatient. "Come here, girl. Let me see what I'm working with." She walked over slowly. The tailor circled around her like she was a piece of furniture, making little clicking sounds with his tongue. "Well," he said after a moment, pulling out a measuring tape, "this will be challenging." She stood still as he started measuring. Around her shoulders, down her arms, around her waist. "Tiny little thing, aren't you?" he muttered, writing numbers in a small notebook. "Barely anything to work with. Like dressing a child." She felt her face get hot, but said nothing. The tailor wrapped the tape around her waist again, tighter this time. "No curves at all. Nothing to flatter. I'll have to get creative just to make you look halfway decent." Her throat tightened. She focused on a spot on the wall and tried to disappear inside her own head, the way she always did when people talked about her body. "Honestly," the tailor continued, moving the tape to her hips, "I don't know why anyone would bother. There's nothing here to enhance. You're built like a stick. No shape. No substance. That's enough." The boss's voice cut through the room like a knife. Cold. Sharp. Dangerous. The tailor froze, the measuring tape still in his hands. "I was simply being honest about the difficulties." "You were being cruel," the boss said, walking toward them slowly. "There's a difference." The tailor's face went pale. "I didn't mean any disrespect. I was just explaining that her body type is not ideal for." "Her body type is fine," the boss interrupted. His voice got quieter, which somehow made it scarier. "Your manners are not." "Sir, I apologize if I offended, but as a professional, I have to be frank about what I'm working with." The boss stopped right in front of the tailor. "No. As a professional, your job is to make clothes that fit the person in front of you, not to tear them down because you're too lazy to do your job properly." The tailor opened his mouth, then closed it again. "You're making excuses," the boss continued, "blaming her body for your lack of skill. That's what cruel people do. They point at others to hide their own failures." She stood there, barely breathing, watching this happen. No one had ever defended her like this. Ever. "When you insult someone's appearance," the boss said, his voice deadly calm, "you're not being honest. You're being lazy. Real skill means working with what's in front of you without complaint. If you can't do that, you're not the professional you pretend to be." The tailor's hands trembled slightly. "I understand. I apologize." "Don't apologize to me," the boss said, stepping aside and gesturing toward her. The tailor turned to face her. He looked sick. "Miss, I sincerely apologize for my inappropriate comments. They were unprofessional and unkind." She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. The boss walked to the door and opened it. "You can leave now. Send your assistant tomorrow. Someone who knows how to do their job without commentary." The tailor gathered his things quickly, stuffing them into his bags with shaking hands. He left without another word. The door closed. The room fell silent. She stood there in the middle of the floor, the measuring tape still hanging around her neck where the tailor had left it. Her whole body felt strange, light and heavy at the same time. The boss turned back to her. "Are you all right?" She pulled the measuring tape off and held it in her hands. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. People say things like that all the time. I'm used to it." "That doesn't make it acceptable," he said firmly. "And you shouldn't have to be used to it." She felt tears starting again. She was so tired of crying in front of him. "Why do you keep doing this?" "Doing what?" "Defending me. Protecting me. Treating me like I matter." Her voice broke. "I don't understand why." He walked closer and stopped a few feet away from her. "Because someone should have been doing it your whole life," he said simply. "And since they didn't, I will." She looked up at him, at this dangerous, feared man who had shown her more kindness in 2 weeks than her own family had shown her in her entire life. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded once. "Tomorrow, a different tailor will come. A better one. If they say anything that makes you uncomfortable, you tell me immediately." "I will." "Good." He moved toward the door, then paused. "And for the record, there's nothing wrong with how you look. Anyone who says otherwise is lying to feel powerful." Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the quiet room, holding a measuring tape and finally understanding what it felt like to have someone stand up for her. A month went by. The new tailor came and made her clothes without a single cruel word. She spent her days reading in the library, walking in the garden, and slowly learning that safety could actually last longer than a few hours. The nightmares started to fade. Her hands stopped shaking every time someone entered a room. One evening, the boss found her in the garden near the stables. Dante, the old horse, was eating an apple from her hand. "I need to ask you something," he said. She turned to face him. "What is it?" "I have a meeting tomorrow night. Important people. Dangerous people." He paused, watching her face carefully. "I want you there." Her stomach dropped. "Why?" "Because they need to see you," he said. "They need to understand that you're under my protection, that you're not going anywhere. If you're not there, they'll think you're hidden away. Weak. Something they can use against me later." "What if I say no?" "Then you say no," he replied simply. "I won't force you, but I think you're ready." She thought about it. A month ago, she would have said no immediately, would have hidden in her room and hoped everyone forgot about her. But something had changed. She had changed. "I'll do it," she said. The next evening, Rosa helped her get ready. One of the new dresses, dark green and simple but well made. Rosa brushed her hair until it shined and pulled it back from her face. "You look strong," Rosa said, stepping back to look at her. "Remember that if you get scared." The meeting was in the large dining room. When she walked in beside the boss, 5 men were already seated around the table. They all looked up at once. Expensive suits, cold eyes, the kind of men who were used to getting whatever they wanted. The boss pulled out a chair for her, not at the end of a table, right next to his seat at the head. She sat down, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. "Gentlemen," the boss said, taking his own seat. "Let's begin." One of the men, heavy built with a thick beard, stared at her openly. "I didn't know we were bringing guests to business meetings now." "She's not a guest," the boss said calmly. "She lives here." Another man, younger with slicked back hair, laughed. "The girl they sent you? I heard about that. I'm surprised she's still breathing." Her face burned, but she kept her eyes forward. "Careful," the boss said, his voice dropping lower. "You're talking about someone under my protection." The bearded man waved his hand dismissively. "No offense meant. But maybe she should wait in another room while we discuss actual business. This isn't really appropriate for—" "For what?" she heard herself say. The room went quiet. Every eye turned to her. She couldn't believe she had just spoken. But now that she started, something inside her refused to stop. "You were going to say, this isn't appropriate for someone like me," she continued, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Because I'm a woman. Because I was given away like trash. Because you think I'm too stupid or too weak to hear what you have to say." The bearded man's face turned red. "Now listen here." "No, you listen," she said, leaning forward slightly. Her hands were shaking under the table, but her voice stayed strong. "I know exactly what all of you think of me. I know what you said when you heard I was sent here. I know you expected me to disappear." She looked directly at the young man who had laughed. "I'm still here. I'm still breathing. And I'm not going anywhere. So you can either accept that and continue your meeting, or you can leave. Your choice." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Then, unexpectedly, an older man at the far end of the table started laughing. Not mean laughter. Genuine amusement. "Well," he said, looking at the boss. "She's got spine. I'll give her that." The boss hadn't moved, hadn't said a word, but she could see something in his eyes. Pride, maybe. Or respect. The bearded man cleared his throat. "Fine. Let's get on with it then." The meeting continued. They talked about shipments and territories and money. She didn't understand half of it, but she sat there and listened. She didn't speak again. She didn't need to. She had already made her point. When the men finally left 2 hours later, the boss walked her back toward the library. They didn't speak until they were alone in the hallway. "You didn't have to defend yourself like that," he said. "Yes, I did," she replied. "You've been standing up for me for weeks. It was time I learned to stand up for myself." He stopped walking and turned to face her. "You scared them." "Good." A small smile crossed his face. Barely there but real. "You're not the same person who walked through those doors a month ago." "No," she agreed. "I'm not." "Are you scared of what you're becoming?" She thought about it. Really thought about it. "No," she said finally. "For the first time in my life, I'm not scared of myself." He nodded slowly. "That's when you're most dangerous. When you stop being afraid of your own power." They stood there in the dim hallway, and she realized something important. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was learning to live, to fight, to matter. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me the chance to find out who I could be." He looked at her for a long moment. "You did that yourself. I just made sure no one got in your way." As she walked to her room that night, she passed a mirror in the hallway. She stopped and looked at her reflection. Same face, same dark hair, same slim frame. But something in her eyes had changed. They looked harder now, stronger, like someone who had finally decided she was worth fighting for. And somewhere deep in the house, the men from the meeting were probably talking about what happened. About the girl who refused to be dismissed. About how the boss's protection had turned into something else entirely. Something they should have seen coming but didn't. 3 weeks after the meeting, everything changed in a single night. The boss came to her room early in the evening. His face looked troubled, more worried than she had ever seen him. "There's a summit tonight," he said. "At the old theater across the city. Every major family will be there. They're planning something. Something big." "What kind of something?" "A vote," he said. "They want to remove me. Take over my territory. Divide it among themselves." Her chest tightened. "What are you going to do?" "I can't go," he said, and she heard frustration in his voice. "They know I've been compromised. Weak, they're calling it. Because of you." He held up a hand before she could speak. "I don't regret it. But if I show up, they'll use it against me. Claim I've gone soft. That I'm no longer fit to lead. So what happens?" He looked at her directly. "You go instead." Her blood went cold. "What?" "You go as my representative," he said. "You speak for me. You show them that protecting you wasn't weakness. It was strategy." "I don't know anything about your business," she protested. "I don't understand half of what you people talk about." "Yes, you do," he said firmly. "You've been listening for weeks. Watching. Learning. You understand more than you think. They'll eat me alive." "Maybe," he agreed. "Or maybe you'll surprise them. Like you surprised me." She stood there, her mind racing. This was insane. Impossible. She was nobody. Just a girl who had been thrown away. But that wasn't true anymore, was it? "What do I need to do?" she asked. He smiled. Actually smiled. "Just be exactly who you've become." An hour later, a car dropped her off in front of the old theater. It was a massive building with tall columns and stone steps. Light glowed from inside. She could see shadows moving behind the windows. Lots of people. Dangerous people. She wore one of her new dresses, black this time, and Rosa had helped her fix her hair. She looked different. Older. More serious. She barely recognized herself. 2 guards stood at the entrance. They looked at her suspiciously. "I'm here for the summit," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Representing the Southern Territory." One guard smirked. "You're the girl. The one he kept." "I'm the one he trusted," she corrected. "Are you going to let me in or explain to everyone inside why you turned away a representative?" They hesitated, then stepped aside. The inside of the theater was even more impressive. Red carpet, gold decorations, a huge circular room with a stage at one end. About 30 people stood around in groups, talking in low voices. They all turned to look when she walked in. The conversation stopped. Someone laughed. Then the whisper started. She walked straight to the center of the room, her heels clicking on the marble floor. She didn't look at anyone, just walked like she belonged there. A man stepped forward, tall, silver-haired, wearing an expensive gray suit. She recognized him from descriptions. Victor, the head of the Eastern families, the one leading the vote against the boss. Well, well, Victor said loudly, making sure everyone heard. He sent the pet. How touching! People laughed. She felt her face get hot, but kept her expression blank. I'm here to represent the Southern Territory, she said clearly. Unless the summit isn't legitimate, and you're all just here to gossip like children. The laughter stopped. Victor's smile faded. You have no authority here. You're nobody. I'm the person he sent, she replied, which means I speak with his voice. Unless you want to claim his vote doesn't count. That would make this whole meeting pointless, wouldn't it? Victor's jaw tightened. Fine. Say what you came to say. She took a breath. This was it. The moment where everything either worked or fell apart completely. You want to vote him out because you think he's weak, she began, her voice carrying through the quiet room. Because he didn't kill me when my family sent me as punishment. You think mercy is weakness. It is, someone called out from the crowd. No, she said firmly. Stupidity is weakness. And you're all about to be very stupid. Angry murmurs rippled through the room. You think you know what happened, she continued, walking slowly as she spoke. You think you understand his strategy. But you don't. She stopped and looked directly at Victor. You know what he did in the first week after I arrived? Victor said nothing. He tracked down every person involved in sending me to him. Found out exactly who made the decision. Who approved it. Who carried it out. She let that sink in. He has files on all of them. Detailed files. Locations. Family members. Weaknesses. That wasn't entirely true. But she had overheard enough conversations to know it wasn't entirely false either. He didn't kill me, she said. Because dead, I'm useless. Alive, I'm leverage. Information. Insurance. Every one of you has enemies who thought throwing away their own people would earn his favor. She looked around the room. How many of you have done the same? Sent someone here as a gift? As payment? As punishment? The silence was thick now. Uncomfortable. You want to know what's weak? She asked. Thinking you can predict him. Thinking he makes decisions based on emotion instead of strategy. That's weak. She turned back to Victor. He kept me alive because it serves him. Because every family that sent someone here now wonders if their secrets walk through his door too. Victor's face had gone pale. You're bluffing. Am I? She tilted her head. Your younger brother, the one you claim died in a car accident 5 years ago. Want to talk about where he actually is? Victor's eyes went wide. She had no idea where his brother was. She was guessing based on a comment she'd overheard weeks ago. But the look on his face told her she'd guessed right. The vote? She said loudly, addressing everyone now. You can take it if you want, but understand what you're actually voting on. You're voting to go to war with someone who knows where all your bodies are buried. Literally. She started walking toward the exit. Where are you going? Victor demanded. Home, she said without turning around. I deliver the message. What you do with it is your choice. But if this vote passes, every family in this room better sleep with one eye open. She walked out of the theater, down the steps, and into the waiting car. Her whole body was shaking. Her hands trembled so badly she had to sit on them. The driver looked at her in the mirror. How did it go? I have no idea, she admitted. When she got back to the house, the boss was waiting in the main hall. He looked at her face and immediately knew something had happened. Well, he asked. I might have just started a war, she said, or prevented one. I honestly can't tell. He studied her for a moment. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. Really laughed. Deep and genuine. What's funny? She asked. You, he said. 2 months ago, you couldn't look anyone in the eye. Tonight, you walked into a room full of killers and made them afraid. I was terrified the whole time. They couldn't tell, he said. That's what matters. 3 days later, word came back. The vote had failed. Not even close. Half the families had withdrawn their support entirely. Victor had disappeared, gone into hiding somewhere. The boss found her in the library when the news arrived. You did it, he said simply. We did it, she corrected. He shook his head. No, that was all you. She closed her book and looked at him. What happens now? Now, he said. Everything changes. Over the next 2 weeks, strange things started happening in the house. People came and went at odd hours. The boss spent long days in his office with lawyers and accountants. Papers were signed. Phone calls were made. Something big was moving, but she couldn't figure out what. Finally, one evening, he asked her to meet him in his study. She found him standing by the window, looking out at the garden where they'd talked by the stables all those weeks ago. He looked tired, older somehow. "Sit down," he said gently. She sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Her stomach twisted with worry. Had she done something wrong? Was he sending her away? "I'm leaving," he said. Her heart stopped. "What?" "Not the house," he clarified quickly. "The business. The organization. All of it." He turned to face her. "I'm getting out." She stared at him, confused. "I don't understand." "Why?" "Because of what you said at the theater," he replied. "You told them I kept you alive because it served me. Because you were leverage and information." He paused. "You were right. That's exactly the kind of thinking that's kept me alive in this world for 20 years. So why are you leaving?" "Because I don't want to live like that anymore," he said simply. "I don't want to use people. I don't want to see everything as strategy and everyone as either useful or disposable." He walked closer. "You changed something in me. Made me remember what it felt like to protect someone without expecting anything in return." She felt tears building behind her eyes. "You're doing this because of me?" "I'm doing this because of who I became around you," he corrected. "The version of me that exists when you're in the room. That's who I want to be all the time. But your power, your empire, everything you built, means nothing if I have to keep being someone I hate," he said. "I've spent my whole life being strong, being feared, being untouchable, and I was miserable every single day." He sat down in the chair next to hers. "Then you walked through that door, terrified and broken, and somehow made me feel more human than I've felt in decades." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "What will you do?" "I'm transferring most of the business to my second in command, a man named Franco. He's ruthless but fair. He'll keep things stable." He leaned forward. "I'm keeping the house, some investments, enough to live comfortably. The rest, the dangerous parts, the criminal parts, that's all going away." "People will think you're weak," she said. "They'll think I made you soft." "Let them think that," he said. "I don't care anymore." "But I do," she said, surprising herself with her own intensity. "I don't want to be the reason you lose everything." He reached out and took her hand. His skin was warm, rough from years of violence and survival. "You're not the reason I'm losing anything. You're the reason I'm finally gaining something that matters." "What's that?" "A choice," he said. "For the first time in my life, I get to choose who I am instead of who I have to be." They sat there in silence for a moment. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. "What about me?" she asked quietly. "What happens to me when you're not the boss anymore? When you don't have power to protect me?" "You don't need my power to protect you," he said firmly. "You walked into that theater alone and scared 30 of the most dangerous people in the city. You did that yourself. Not because of me. Because of who you are." "I'm nobody," she whispered. "No," he said. "You were treated like nobody. There's a difference." He squeezed her hand gently. "You're smart. You're brave. You're stronger than anyone who's ever underestimated you. And now you get to decide what you do with that strength." "I don't know what I want," she admitted. "That's fine," he said. "You have time to figure it out. We both do." "We," she repeated. He looked at her carefully. "I'm not the boss anymore. I'm just a man who owns a house and has more money than he needs. A man who would very much like it if you stayed." He paused. "Not because you have to. Not because you're under my protection or because you owe me anything. But because I like who I am when you're here." Her heart beat faster. "You want me to stay?" "Only if you want to," he said. "You're free to leave whenever you choose. The house, money for travel, letters of recommendation, whatever you need. I'll make sure you're safe and set up wherever you want to go. And if I stay, then we figure out what comes next together," he said. "As equals." That word hit her hard. Equals. No one had ever treated her as an equal before. Not her family. Not the people who used her. Not even the staff here in the beginning, though they'd gotten better. I want to stay, she said. The words came out stronger than she expected. He smiled. A real smile, not the hard, bitter one she'd seen in the beginning. Good, because I was hoping you'd say that. 2 months later, the house was different. Quieter. The guards were gone except for 2 who maintained the property. The dangerous men stopped visiting. Franco came by once to sign final papers, nodded respectfully at both of them, and left without issue. She and the boss, except he asked her to call him by his actual name now, Marco, spent their days figuring out what normal life looked like. He taught her to ride Dante. She taught him that books could be entertaining, not just useful. They ate meals without business discussions, walked through the garden without looking over their shoulders. One evening, they sat on the back porch watching the sunset. She gained weight. Her face looked healthier. The dark circles under her eyes had faded. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Giving up everything?" He thought about it seriously. "I regret the years I wasted being someone I hated. I don't regret this." "People say you were destroyed by a woman," she said. "That I ruined you." "Let them say it," he replied. "They're partially right. You did destroy something. The part of me that thought power and fear were the same as respect. The part that believed being alone made me strong." He looked at her. "You destroyed the worst parts of me. I'm grateful." She leaned her head against his shoulder. Something she never would have done 3 months ago. Something that felt natural now. "I used to think I was nothing," she said quietly. "Just something people used and threw away. And now I know I was never the problem," she said. "They were. All of them. They threw away something valuable because they were too stupid to see what it was worth." He put his arm around her shoulders. "Took you long enough to figure that out." She smiled. "I had a good teacher." They sat there as the sun disappeared below the horizon, 2 people who had found each other in the darkest circumstances and somehow made something good from it. She wasn't a prisoner anymore. He wasn't a monster. They were just 2 people learning how to be human together. And that, it turned out, was more powerful than any empire. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.